Here at the Giver Marketing Network, we don't leave you drifting out in space. We connect you to a coach who will help you build and grow your marketing business. Our process acts as a guide on how to connect with other businesses, maintain good relations, and establish a presence on the Giver Marketing Network. Each member within this collaborative group will have the opportunity to leverage your talent and influence, a true network effect. If you are looking to collaborate on more projects, welcome to the Giver Marketing Network, the most trusted and highest rated collective of specialists on the planet. Here we have a group of like-minded professionals who focus on making valuable introductions and helping each other grow by teaming up. Imagine Upwork meets a network and a coach. The talent collectively includes services like visibility and SEO, creating logos, designing websites, managing social media, outreach messaging, visual storytelling, and much more. Think of what you could do with laser-focused allies strengthening your business while offering your talent to the entire network. Click near this video for more information.
Hey friends, welcome to the Giver Marketing Network broadcast, and all the Kingdom Warriors out there, check it out. We got Frank Piuck with us today. Buckle up because we're going to have a lot of fun talking about how to unlock those bottlenecks. You ever have those gears in your business that are kind of locked up and they need to be released? Well, Frank's going to talk to us about why and how to do that. And you'll want to pay attention. Look him up on LinkedIn and social media, even right now as we're getting started. But before we jump into the presentation today, Frank, tell us a little bit about your background. Like, where did you go to school? Like, where did you come from? Like, what's the story behind the story? And as it relates to even your business, but like, where did you come from?
Okay, well, we'll go back very far. I am the son of an engineer and a doctor.
Okay.
My mother was a psychiatrist. My father was a brilliant manufacturing engineer. And my first job out of college, he dragged me into the factory and made me a foreman. And man, did I learn a hell of a lot very fast.
All right.
But then I decided to get an MBA. I went to Columbia Business School, and Columbia Business School was geared to finance and consulting. That was where most of the graduates went. But I was thinking, I came out of manufacturing. I know manufacturing. I want to go back to manufacturing. Probably wasn't the right business school for that because that's not, the manufacturers weren't recruiting there. But I graduated. I sent out a lot of resumes, ended up in a defense contractor on Long Island. And wasn't excited. It was a good learning experience, but I wasn't meeting my ambitions, so I went job hunting, and this boutique consulting firm hired me. They sold software and implementation and what they called thoughtware around it. And thoughtware was their innovation, and that came about because they presented their software and found that a lot of companies just wouldn't buy it. There was one story in particular that taught me after I got hired. They did a demo of the software for a plant manager in a big company, and they demonstrated that they could improve the throughput dramatically, that they could get a much more reliable flow through the factory. And he said, "That's awesome. That's amazing. I wish I could use it." And they said, "Well, why can't you use it?" He said, "Because, well, I'm not sure I'd get fired, but I'd definitely lose my bonus because I will be breaking all sorts of rules that are imposed upon me."
Oh, I get you. Okay. And so you're in this kind of innovative environment that's trying to really change the way
Yep.
certain aspects of manufacturing are done and other industries as well. And then what
The
happened?
the founder of the company was actually a scientist. He was an Israeli physicist, and he had been creating mathematical tools for physics experiments. And a friend of his said, this would really be a great way to schedule a factory.
Oh,
And so we scheduled a factory, and productivity improve the production, the rate of production. They made more than they could sell in a business. But he said, well, I'm onto something here. So he came to business completely naive. He came as a scientist with, voracious curiosity, and he kept seeing things that didn't make sense. And he built this company to install software, and realized that, based as the story said, that for the software to be used, the philosophies and the management systems of the company had to change. He managed to, the company managed to get major clients. I worked on a project with Eastman and Kodak back when it was a very United Technologies. Um, but I moved on, and that the original idea was to a long, long time, and used the insight from that first experience as best I could, and a really important idea. It's really useful. It's really powerful, and some of it's obvious, and a lot of it's counterintuitive.
Okay.
And we will
So
go
you
into
ended up
that
working with this
as soon as we
company.
start the presentation.
You ended up working with this company, and it just shifted the way you were thinking about systems, about processes, about parts of business that can improve the output. At the end of the day, it improves the systems, the flow, and the output. Is that
Yes.
correct? Awesome. Well, I'm excited to learn more. You've been helping us with our company, and your internet is breaking up just a little bit. So if I give you the signal, we might need to shift gears, but let's go right into the presentation, and go ahead and bring that up. By Well, actually, I can do it for you. I'll just bring it up on stage, and then that way you can walk us through the visuals of how to identify and how to understand this concept. And if folks are interested in talking with you about improving the systems in your company, this is the gentleman to talk to, especially as it relates to your marketing, because he's got a marketing background as well. And so I'm excited to see what you have here. I'm going to click right through. Anything you want to share about this slide here?
Market bottlenecks. Understanding your bottlenecks is a tool for management. If
Okay.
you understand where the choke points are, you get a huge insight into how your business works. So we're using the word bottleneck. It's a metaphor for the limited resources in a system. As the slide says, the obvious example, the simplest one to explain, is if you have a factory and every product that goes through the factory has to go through one machine, you can't produce more than the capacity of that machine. If you don't have demand, then maybe you have surplus capacity at that machine. But if business picks up at some point, that's your max. And you better know that, or you're going to make trouble for yourself. Frequently, I've seen factories where they don't even know where the bottlenecks are because the management system is such that they've got so much work on the floor that the bottleneck may be starved because the flow of materials is so erratic and so expedited as opposed to systematic. And at
Interesting.
that company,
Interesting.
we saw that all the time. That was actually the key insight, the key management tool for scheduling the factory that we brought. Um, the but the tool works. The concept works beyond that. Is managers can be a bottleneck. The chain of command can be a bottleneck. If the CEO is always a bottleneck, because this in a large company, there are 100 things demanding the CEO's attention, and he can't give it all the attention it deserves. And if he's a really good CEO, he's delegating to really good people, but they still are going to be bringing him more questions than he can answer in a timely fashion.
So for all the nerds out there that want to look up fancy words, can we bring in that theory that we had discussed before, Frank? Is that appropriate?
Yeah. So since I worked at that company, the man who founded it wrote a whole bunch of books, and he started with manufacturing, and then he worked through other parts of business, and he ended up calling the whole concept the theory of constraints. So the man's name was Eli Goldratt. He's passed on. The theory of constraints is sort of the capstone book. It's relatively short. It's probably easier to understand if you start with some of the earlier books. The first one he wrote was called The Goal, which is about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. And The
Okay,
Goal is a brilliant book and a bad novel.
got it. I
Uh,
think I've written one of those. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. If anybody's listening, I'm just kidding. Okay. All right. So you got this theory of constraints that's informed your genius and how you help. Let's take, for example, the Giver Marketing Company, the Giver
mhm.
Marketing Network, the Giver Marketing Brand, the Giver Marketing Company, the whole network and how we work together on projects, how we're even doing what we're doing right now. You've helped us identify that there are issues within that are creating a constraint. They're creating a bottleneck. They're creating an issue. They're creating a roadblock for certain capacity to be released. I'm thinking about even like a freelancer who, whatever business you're in, whether it's marketing or not, if you're a freelancer and you're helping another company and you got an influx of business, you have a limited capacity to be able to actually deliver. And so I'm just thinking through, like,
Mhm.
there's a lot of us, whether we have a multi-million dollar company or we're just, starting out and generating our first couple $100,000, we're going to need to know this, because when the demand for our time goes up, we got to figure out how to release more output. Is that correct?
So, there's a classic story about the freelancer with the boom and bust business cycle, right? They get a lot of work, they work like crazy, and then they finish all the jobs, and then they're starving because their time is limited. And if they devote all of it to the clients and they stop marketing, then their pipeline dries up.
There you go. There's the problem, ladies and gentlemen, for most businesses in America. Right there is the problem that Frank is going to help us address. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, unless you want to go back.
No, no. So, why should marketers care about bottlenecks? Well, for their own business. And also because if you don't know what the bottlenecks are in your client's business, if you don't know what the constraints are, you could have a brilliant marketing campaign and it could derail. You could be completely blindsided by things in their business process that if you, hey, they're at 85% capacity and you get them to 110% capacity, they can't meet that 10%.
How
They
many
can only go to
times,
100.
ladies and gentlemen, for the marketers in the room and that are about to ask a bunch of questions in the comments, how many times have you been able to help a company, but what you're actually helping them with creates a bit of an overwhelm, because it's so many leads or so many prospects or so many appointments or so many possibilities coming through the door, that they're like, wait a minute, I thought this was going to be easy. And when it comes right down to it, the issue is the bottleneck that Frank's talking about, not whether you can help them on the marketing side or help them on the XYZ side, whatever it is. It's this ability to handle more business is the issue. And so I love that you address this, Frank.
Let's go to the next slide.
All right.
So any step in a marketing funnel can be a bottleneck, right? It could be the first step, it can be the second step, it can be the fifth step. You have a great funnel and you take it to a crappy website, you've killed half the investment that you've put into getting that funnel working.
Great point.
You have to have a good website to maximize the value of the funnel. You get to the end of the funnel, you get successful sales, you get a company that's got a market and the product isn't perfect. what product is, and there's customer service, and you have customers calling customer service and they're on hold for an hour, you've probably lost a customer, or you've certainly damaged your ability to sell to them again. And often it's an invisible bottleneck. I mean, if you've got one of those phone systems where people are on hold for an hour, you don't even know what damage you're doing to your future sales. You don't even have a clue how many people have hung up on you, right?
I like that term, invisible bottleneck. Sounds like a book you're gonna write or something. That's really good.
Well, there's a LinkedIn post that's going to come in a week or two.
Ooh, watch out. I love it.
All right, but bottlenecks are not always bad. I mean, in fact, the bottleneck was invented, right? It was an intentional thing. The difference between a bottle and a jar is that neck, and the neck was invented to control the flow when you're pouring.
Okay.
And a controlled flow is a very valuable thing. I mean, the Toyota was built on controlling flow, just-in-time manufacturing, which,
Mhm.
revolutionized manufacturing all over the world, was based on controlling flow. They were deliberately choosing where the bottlenecks were. So bottlenecks can be very useful in pouring. They can be very useful in business.
I love it.
So how do you use a bottleneck? The first thing is you have to find them, right? You need to know the system's capacity, and the current capacity may or may not be the real capacity. Again, that example I gave of the manufacturer who said, I wish I could use this system, because it would have made once he knew where the bottleneck was, and scheduled around it, his system could have produced more than it was. The way the business was being run, the way the scheduling was being run, the bottleneck was underutilized. But the
What
next thing
about
is,
what
if
about Frank when a bottle neck is so small that it doesn't allow for nearly enough output to it's just like a drip, drip, drip. Like what is that what we're discussing here today?
well, if you have a single bottleneck and it's grossly inadequate, then increasing the capacity of the bottleneck is the obvious thing to do. And
Okay.
there are lots of ways to do that. If you have a factory that's running 8 hours a day, the bottleneck could run for 10, and you've increased the capacity to the factory. You don't need to give everybody overtime. You just need to make sure there's overtime at that bottleneck.
Got it.
Um,
Okay, so you gotta be selective with how you release, open, and shut different like
right.
valves,
And
if you
and and obviously you have a bottleneck. The first thing you think about is, can I increase the capacity at the bottleneck? And again, there are many ways to do that. But if you have bottlenecks and near bottlenecks, and you increase the capacity of the bottleneck, you're just going to have a new bottleneck. So before you invest in improving that bottleneck, you need to know where the next one may pop up.
got it.
It,
Okay, so
it's
there's
it's
multiple.
a very simple factory. Maybe you don't need to do that, but the more complex the system, and I mean, I'm using factory as a simple way to do it, but the paper flow in an insurance company is
Mhm.
like a paper factory. A lab is like a job shop in a factory. So you have to understand where the capacity constraints are, not just the primary bottleneck, but the secondary ones. But there are other ways to offload a bottleneck too. If you've got equipment that's less than ideal for what you're producing, but it will offload the bottleneck and it will be less efficient, it might be cheaper to use that machine and increase the capacity of the factory that way than to invest in a better machine that you would have to
Got it.
buy and cost you more money.
Good point.
So one of the things you want to do is you want to be if I break this bottleneck and I'm going to have another one that's going to increase, breaking this bottleneck, doubling the capacity to this bottleneck resource takes me to a resource that gives me 2% more capacity. Maybe I didn't need to do that. Maybe I needed to be thinking about the whole system flow. Maybe I just need to do some tweaks. Maybe it's very important that you're not simplistic about this.
Okay,
But
so it could be complex, but
when you know where the
when they bring
bottlenecks are,
you
you
in,
prioritize.
you can identify them.
Yes, and you want to prioritize the investments you make in the business based on where the bottlenecks are. If you improve the capacity of your factory and you don't have enough warehouse capacity to handle the new output, you've got a completely different problem. You have to
Got it.
recognize that improved factory capacity means that the output have issues. The marketing may need to change. The storage policies may need to change.
Got it.
But assuming that, you know, go on, this one's called the life cycle of marketing, right? If you are a brand new business, your first order of business is to prove that you have a product that somebody wants to buy, or to find a product, tweak your idea until you've got some sales. And then you exhaust your network, you need to be finding new customers, so marketing becomes the bottleneck. And then you get a flow of new customers and you're getting 20% conversion, you need to improve your sales. And then you're selling enough, and now you hit the point where you're at production capacity, whether as a marketing agency or as a factory or as a warehouse, whatever it is that service you're providing, there's a finite capacity at any given level of investment. And if you get the marketing tuned in and the sales tuned in, you're going to hit capacity of fulfillment. You have to work on that. You get fulfillment up, the bottleneck moves back to somewhere between marketing and sales, right? And then
Got it.
of course there's we all know about the constant arguments in large companies between the marketers and the sales. Hey, we're giving you all these leads and you're not selling. Hey, if the leads were better, I would be selling. Or get me even more leads because I'm getting a 20% conversion. But if the quality of the lead was better, maybe it'd be a 50% conversion. So maybe fewer leads, but better ones would be better than the large number of leads that ends up wasting salespeople time on people who aren't actually customers. It's still bottleneck analysis, right? I
Got
mean,
it. So
it's
even in the
tangential.
marketing, even in the business development aspects of our companies, the marketing and sales, sometimes it's good to have somebody with a second pair of eyes to say, hey, your problem's not marketing, it's the sales side, or your problem's not sales, it's the marketing side. Maybe it's both, but let's address the actual bottleneck here.
Let's define the problem as best we can, right? So maybe marketing is, maybe you stop incentivizing marketing for the number of leads and you incentivize them for the quality of the lead.
Ooh, come on, Frank just dropped a nugget right there. Super interesting. Okay. So as a marketing professional, my ears just perked up real big.
One of the key one of the key things they taught me at that company, that was many years ago, was that the incentives really, really matter. If you tell a manufacturing manager that have to keep the cost per piece really low, they're going to make really, really big lots, whether you need them or not. They say, well, we can make a year's supply. Let's make a year's supply. And I did a gig at a company doing chemicals for photographs. At least some of the audience remembers photographs and development chemicals. And they would make a 2-year supply because it would only take it would take more time to set up than it took to run 2-year supply. So they make a 2-year supply of something that had a 1-year shelf life.
Oh,
But they were
interesting. Okay.
incentivized on quantity, right? That the
Incentivized on
efficiency of
quantity.
the factory was what they were measured on, not the value of what they were making.
So the question might be, what are we doing too much of, and what are we not doing enough of? And who can
Hmm.
help me evaluate that so we can have greatest efficiency in our business, whatever kind of business it is. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're paying attention to this, whether live or in the replay, please put in the comments what you think you need to do more of that will create the most efficiency. And that'll give us some clues as we get into questions and answers and comments and those kind of things. Frank will maybe be able to circle back with you, especially if you reach out to him as well. But it's just a good exercise. I'm thinking right now of our business and how we need more conversations with marketing professionals who are of high character, competence, and collaboration. And that's what I think we need more of. But then there's also some things in the background that Frank's working with us on. What happens when they jump into our network, and how does that experience feel? And there's JD and Joel and others and Christine that are helping make sure that we welcome our members well. So there's all these pieces in your business that you might want to throw some comments in to kind of give us an idea of where you're at that you want to improve upon. What area of your business do you want to improve upon? So I love it.
So just a couple more caveats, right? When the environment changes, the bottleneck moves. You're selling something for 10 years and the world changes in some way, and all of a sudden your business is not aligned with the market. So when the pandemic happened, real estate maintenance was not the issue. The issue was, how do people communicate? Zoom skill became a huge bottleneck for, fortunately, a relatively short period of time. IT security became immensely more difficult and more important when people were working from home and communicating over the internet with each other on a regular basis. And, the things that would be face-to-face stuff suddenly is transmitted on Slack channels and Microsoft Teams channels, and somebody hacking could get all sorts of important trade secrets. So IT security, which has been important for decades, but incredibly more important as soon as work from home became standard. Since the launch of ChatGPT, AI expertise has become incredibly important. AI experts are in high demand. The IT divisions, the IT operations of the major corporations are all flooded with demands for AI services that they can't meet because they don't have the people. And for that matter, the data centers, where they do have enough intellectual capacity to run it, they don't have the NVIDIA chips they need to build the servers to accommodate this. There's just not enough AI capacity, and when we get enough chips, the electric grid is going to be overwhelmed. There's American electricity is going to be a serious bottleneck very,
And
very soon.
and really worldwide, because there's so many developing countries that are just rocking and just coming to another level of technology, and we're all kind of we're all one small world with one click away from each other now. So super interesting conversation, Frank.
Well, the electrical grid is a bottleneck in most countries in the world. It hasn't been a bottleneck in the United States since the Depression, but it will be again very, very soon. It is in California already.
Very interesting. All right, so
So
what do we do? What's our call to action here?
the call to action is, look for your bottlenecks, and they're not always in obvious places. Look at the measurements, the performance measurements you put on your people, because they can be creating disincentives to do the right thing and
Okay.
incentives to do the wrong thing, which can create bottlenecks. Focus your management attention on the bottlenecks as you find them. Invest in current bottlenecks before you invest in things that you have plenty of capacity for.
So you're not viewing bottlenecks as just a negative thing based on what you were saying before. They could be properly placed, just like the wine bottle, and it could be a really beautiful and a good thing. It's just got to be done with intelligence and with data and with observation and analysis, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And before you break a bottleneck, before you add capacity to a bottleneck, know where the next one's going to be.
Okay. All right.
Because maybe you want to add capacity to the next gating resource before you break the bottleneck. Maybe you have opportunities to rethink the material flow. And one other thing, which I think might be on the next slide, if you know where your capacity, where you have surplus capacity, where the bottleneck doesn't constrain you,
Mm-hmm.
that's a business opportunity.
Got it, because you have more capacity,
You have
correct?
more capacity. If you have a certain flow of process and that underutilizes one of your people, and that person has skills that can be used outside of that process, maybe you can have a new line of business.
Come on, ladies and gentlemen, that's a gold nugget. Somebody put that in the comments. If you have capacity for, I'm just saying it in my own words, Frank, tell me if I'm doing this right, because I learn every time we talk. I learn. I love this. So if you have more capacity in a particular area and there's enough demand, that's called opportunity. I mean, that's
That is.
something you want to talk to Frank about. Like, how does this even work? Because he's got a marketing and kind of this like systems operations kind of vibe going on, and he's been helping our company identify some of these things. And we're finally starting to get it. Frank's genius is like, oh, well, what about this? This can open up this, and all these opportunities start developing when you work with people like Frank. So, hey, how do people get a hold of you, and what should they expect, Frank?
Well, I'm glad to give anybody a 30-minute consultation on bottlenecks. You click on the QR code and it will get you to the Calendly link that's showing right above it. You can email me directly at fpiuck@cyberhenge.com. And I'm more than glad to hear from any of you and talk to you and help you see if we can't, figure out what your problems are and figure out how to solve them.
We've had several sessions with Frank, and it's worth every minute, ladies and gentlemen. Just to have him listen in on one of your team meetings, or listen in on, or have a quick conversation about what it is that you think might be the issues and the opportunities in your business. Maybe we can increase capacity over here, or maybe that's not doing what we thought it was doing, or some kind of analysis that, with this marketing background he has, will improve your processes dramatically, because he knows the importance of marketing and sales. He's not just stuck in the back end of the factory. He knows exactly what is happening in your business on the front end, but he also understands a little bit of the back end. So talk to Frank if you want to get a holistic picture of what might be the opportunities coming before you. Grab that phone even right now as you're watching this. Click a picture of this screen. It will take you to his calendar. And if for some reason that doesn't work with your phone, just go to calendly.com/cyberhenge/30min. Let's go. And you can see the link in the comments as well. So calendly/cyberhenge/30min. Let's go, guys. All right, Frank, we're going to go into the roundtable discussion. We're going to be bringing in our team members. I'm going to leave this QR code up for just a couple more seconds for those who want to take a quick picture of it. But we're going to bring in our roundtable guests to be able to our team members to be able to ask you some questions about these topics. So whoever's in the room, I can see your face. I'm going to bring you up on stage. So get ready, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. All right. We got some good looking folks in the room. We got all sorts of folks in the room. Big smiles. You didn't know you were being checked out from the VIP room, did you, Frank? I mean, this is fun.
Oh, I've been in the VIP room checking them out. I knew.
Okay, you knew. All right, good. So I'm gonna remove this in 3, 2, 1. All right, that was your chance, ladies and gentlemen. So look up Frank Piuck on LinkedIn and some other places if you'd like to connect with him as well. Okay, he's good to follow, and he's someone to learn from. Okay.
The one really good advantage of a weird name is that I'm easy to find on LinkedIn.
That is true. Piuck. Let's go. Okay. All right. So listen, we got this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, that's kind of a mix of marketing, business development meets operations. It's almost like this systematic way of thinking about your business, but understanding that we have this marketing kind of bent towards this conversation. What are the questions we have for Frank? I see some in the comments already, so we'll save those for just a few minutes from now. But what questions do we have ahead of time for Frank?
Quick question for you, Frank. I appreciate the work that you're doing here in the network and the conversations that you and I have enjoyed. And one of the things that comes to mind for me is as people are looking, we hear from clients all the time, we just need more sales. But as we look at agency growth, how important how much importance do you put on resources to handle capacity prior to reaching capacity?
Ooh, good question, Joel. Way to start us off.
Yeah, well, especially in a marketing agency, it seems to me that you want to have, you can't afford to have too much surplus capacity, which is, of course, one of the virtues of the network here is that you have people on call that are not your employees that you can collaborate with. But having more resource than you absolutely need is very desirable. The financial constraints are always a bottleneck too, and that one's a harder one to overcome. But to the extent that you have the resources to have a little more than you absolutely need, you should. I mean, that gives you training opportunities. It gives you, grow your people and grow their capability is an important factor.
I love that we're talking about team dynamics a little bit right now. This is
because if everybody's at 100%, nobody has time to learn anything.
Well said. Well said. Somebody put that in the comments. If everybody's at 100%, nobody has time to learn more and their skill, skill of choice or their expansion of skill. I love that. So good. Who else has a question for Frank? We can come back to that one, Joel, in just a minute, but I want to make sure we get to do a little popcorn first.
There was I had a question for you, Frank. Because we're talking about bottlenecks, and a lot in our business, we see a whole bunch of different types of business. It's not like in manufacturing or in marketing. But what are the common symptoms that you'll see across the board, across industries for bottlenecks?
It's a really good question. I see them and I recognize them when they impinge on me. So, how customer service is a bottleneck in so many companies. How many times have you been on hold? How many times have you dealt with an idiot chatbot that couldn't answer your question and wouldn't let you talk to a human being until it made you tortured you for 5 minutes, or wouldn't let you talk to anybody at all because you're
Isn't
not
that
answering
called artificial unintelligence at some point? Like,
I think that's fair.
I'm not saying every AI is I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there are some situations where it's actually artificially unintelligent.
Well, listen, I got stuck on a Google chatbot. If there's any company in the world that has no excuse for an idiot chatbot, it's Google, and it was an idiot chatbot. So there's a pandemic of idiot chatbots, and we need.
There's some good ones, but there's also some idiots, right? Just like almost every industry, right?
So the majority of chatbots are dumb and counterproductive.
No, Frank! Be careful, Frank. We have so much good technology coming through, but you're right.
No, the majority. There's much less excuse. I mean, there never was a good excuse for it. It was always some fool in accounting thinking they were saving money when they were actually costing money. But with large language model artificial intelligence, the excuse goes away. You either prepare to invest in an intelligent chatbot and spend the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars it's going to take, or just scrap the damn thing and hire more people.
Oh, dang, Joel. JD, you had a question that was very specific. Can you rephrase that question again?
Well, I gave a specific example that's universal anyway.
Yeah, you gave an example that's very, very much a part of my industry because I'm in customer service. But when we're going across industries, I'm looking for like if I was going to say an engineering company and then I'm going to an advertising company, are there any bottlenecks that you see that are crossing over into other industries?
Well, there are certain commonalities between an engineering company and an ad agency, which is that you've got knowledge workers who can be managed differently, and depending on how they're managed, and the same management techniques would apply to both, you can have very dysfunctional organizations or very effective organizations. So the equivalent of Scrum in computer programming would be applicable to an advertising agency or a marketing agency, and absolutely to an engineering firm. But that that doesn't fit the conventional definition of a bottleneck, but it is management technique. And how do you make sure that everybody in the organization feels safe and get them to produce as efficiently and as fast as possible? Allow them to make mistakes and not penalize them for it, because those mistakes are a learning opportunity, and because um, getting the project done quickly, and then make small mistakes and fix them fast, as opposed to dragging out whatever the process is, whether it's the ad campaign, the marketing campaign, the engineering design project, the software development project. Um, these aren't bottlenecks the same way a machine is. That they are constraints. That how you
They're like
measure
human
people,
related or human resource related, right?
right? And performance measurement, how you incentivize people, can be a huge problem if the incentives are wrong. That factory manager who said, well, I've got to produce large lots, that's the way I'm measured, even though it means that my factory is less productive. Um, the software, the customer service personnel who were incentivized to get the clients off the phone quick, to get as many calls as possible, means that they're not solving the customer's problems, and they're going to be more calls and angrier customers than if the incentive is get these problems solved. And if you can't figure out how to do it, call somebody, and you get credit for calling somebody when you don't know what to do.
Ah, interesting. Incentivization meets efficiency meets customer success. Okay,
Yeah.
I love the direction this conversation is going. Christine, do you have anything to add as far as a question or anything?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how that ties into the company's values, right? So,
Yes,
depending on what those values are to start with, you may be creating your own bottlenecks without even realizing it if you're not
absolutely.
creating the proper culture for what your goals are.
Well,
Mm.
and I've met some people in finance and accounting who really understand business very well. And then there are other people who just see the numbers, and they don't understand that the numbers represent human realities. And and so you make if you have inadequate information and you're looking at the numbers, you make dumb decisions. My favorite example: we have all heard that hospital beds are expensive. Hospital beds might cost $3,000. That doesn't mean that they cost $3,000 a night. Why is a hospital bed expensive? Because a hospital is expensive. If you have $1 billion hospital and 1,000 beds, that means each bed is representing $1 million of total cost for the hospital. So if you think you're going to save money by cutting beds, you're still going to have $1 billion hospital with less capacity, and you have an incentive to send people home too soon, and you don't have the capacity to handle an emergency. If you have 2,000 beds, the cost per bed goes down by 50%. We should be adding more hospital beds, not fewer. The cost of the system would
Ah,
actually, the cost of the hospital would go up a little bit. The cost to the nation would go down, because the management of healthcare would be different in a way that would be better for everybody.
wow. Frank's solving the medical crisis right now. What the heck is going on? Okay, so and that's Christine's fault for asking a great question. Nice work. Nice work. I feel like the IQ, and at least for me, goes up in the room every time I spend time with you, whether we're on a live broadcast like we are right now, or in a mastermind, or in a team meeting. So this is super fun. Dominic, you had 2 or 3 really good concepts. Can you frame at least one of them in a question and see if it can help us in a conversation here? You had 1 or 2 good questions there. Maybe pick one.
Yeah, sure. So, I like both of them, but
Yeah.
okay, I'll pick the second one. Do you have like a concrete example in which someone can have a bottleneck, but they were just kind of blind and not seeing it for some reason? Like it was there, but there was something stopping them from seeing it. Like maybe it was obvious from an objective third person outside the business, but for some reason that something is stopping you from seeing it yourself? Maybe it's a psychological thing. I don't know. Have you noticed anything like that?
Sure. It happens all the time. You come into a business and there's a way of doing things, and depending on the corporate culture, if asking questions of certain kinds are frowned upon, then those questions don't get answered and people become blind to it. And somebody comes in who is not subject to those kinds of psychological pressures and asks the question, it can be very revealing. I mean, that's one reason why consultants actually are useful sometimes. But I think it's universal that we all have blind spots, and the blind spot in and of itself is by definition an invisible bottleneck. If there's stuff you can't see, you can't fix it.
Frank, I'm going to be transparent here in our working together, and it's all Dominic's fault. But I'm going to just share how I, as the founder of Giver Marketing Network, have several blind spots that I'm starting to see because of our work with you and Christine and Joel and JD, just others that have kind of come to the table and said, "Hey, have you thought about this? Because our goal is this, but we're not going to get there unless we do X, Y, Z." And one of those concrete examples, I'm going to try to frame this in a positive way, but it was very painful. Okay. So let me just share this the best I can. But one of our goals is to go from 100 members to 1,000 members. And the very kind and insightful and genius level questions that Frank and Christine, a few others have had over the years is, how are we going to handle that? Do we have the capacity to handle that? And I'm like, yeah, we could do it. We are awesome people. And it's like, no. Do we have the systems, the onboarding, the welcoming, the customer service? To JD's point, Joel's always asking, well, what about this? And what about this? Like, well, let's make sure that people are taken care of. Christine's like, I'll help. And, everybody's trying to pitch in, but the system wasn't really geared to handle that until you came into the room and said, what about like team of teams? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this concept? Because right now that's a negative bottleneck to some degree, because we can't handle more. And that's your goal. That's what you're telling me anyway. So we end up asking some folks to become team leaders. And this is a common organizational issue where the founder and a few others try to handle everything. And they want to feel like they're super important in a room. A lot of ego starts coming in, even a little bit of insecurity mixed with ego, which is a dangerous cocktail. And then you got people with just this quiet genius just come in and say, hey, have you thought about this? I really care about you guys. I want to make sure you don't burn out. And then we start asking folks to become team leaders, and we're in the middle of doing that right now. So I'm just being super transparent here. But Frank, I want to just thank you, because that's a concrete example of how you've taken one of our major goals and turned it into a possibility, because we started evaluating the different steps that it would take to be able to kind of increase that capacity and make that work. So that's an example, I think, that would, without getting too nerdy about all the details, like that was one example.
So one of the adages that I have taken to heart over the years is sometimes you go farther if you go slower. If you take giant steps, you might succeed or you might fall flat on your face. If you take a lot of baby steps, you are less likely to, babies fall down, but when grown-ups take baby steps, they're not likely to fall down. And
that's like worth quoting right there. When grown-ups take baby steps, they don't generally fall down. That's interesting. Like that's just one of those phrases I've never heard before. I can see Frank like just doing this, like just taking baby steps the whole time. Okay, I like it.
So people want to have the most beautiful website before they figured out what the website's supposed to be talking about.
Ooh, somebody drop that in the comments. That's right related to all of our worlds of marketing and communications and media. Like, let's make sure our websites have a very clear purpose and and a flow to. Okay, I like it. And I know
Marketing
that's
copy is actually a very good concrete example of an invisible bottleneck.
Say again.
Bad marketing copy is an invisible bottleneck.
Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about funnels and copy and just kind of how we can increase that just as we land the plane today, because Dominic has one more question that he wants to ask, and it's related to this idea of like biz dev and funnels and like what if this happens versus this happens. And so Dr. Frank, I know you're not a Dr. Frank, I'm just saying that. Dr. Frank, we have a question for you. It's a this or that type of question. So Dominic, fire away.
Sure. So it's the other question. So I asked, have you ever had a situation where you thought all funnel elements were really good, but results were still lacking for some reason, and you just couldn't realize what was going on? And it was not you being blind and not seeing the bottleneck. It's just everything was optimized, but still something's not working.
Well, that strikes me as a blind bottleneck.
Blind bottleneck.
You know,
Yeah.
the funnel is actually not an ideal metaphor, because in a real world funnel, in a physical funnel, you pour stuff in, and however fast it comes through the bottleneck in the funnel, it comes out. Unless you put too much in, it overflows. In a marketing funnel, it's actually a filtering mechanism, and you don't want everything to go through. You want the people who are not your customers to drop out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems with some funnels is that they don't screen well enough, and the wrong stuff flows through.
That's
Come
powerful.
on, Frank.
Really.
That's really insightful. Thank you for the upgraded metaphor of funnel. A funnel with the right filters and the right amount coming in versus the right output. That's super interesting. Gosh, we need to have you back for another like funnel, like upgrade your funnel kind of thing, and have Dominic and you do a case study or do something together. This is awesome.
If I may just follow up on this question with a concrete example. So I had a client, and everything was kind of perfect in the funnel: traffic generation, quiz as a lead magnet, email sequences afterwards, sales page was decent, branding, website was, like all of the stuff was great, and we had zero sales. And I was thinking about it, and then I just couldn't realize. I mean, email marketing funnels, that's what I do. It's what I do for a living. And I couldn't realize what is going wrong. And then we realized we were selling something people needed, but they didn't want it. So it was actually a cool product, really great, useful. They really did need it. However, they did not want it. Concretely, it was a course on how to place or position your domestic products into shelves of supermarket stores and supermarket chains. And then we realized people didn't actually want to learn about it. They actually wanted like a done for you solution, somebody who can connect you to people, or somebody who will just do it somehow for you instead of you, and so on and so on. So that was I don't know, I just wanted to share a situation like it was blind, like a blind bottleneck, but it's not that it wasn't good enough. It's just maybe we got the wrong perspective or the wrong angle. So that was cool.
Well, in one of the slides, I said product to market fit is the first bottleneck, right? And this was a product to market fit.
I would also say that your program was successful because you received data that allowed you to succeed by releasing the bottleneck.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This conversation is getting way deep because you're talking about the psychology of the buyer as it meets the product market fit because the psychology says, look, if I'm not aware that I need it, I might kick the tires or maybe ask a few questions, and I might even be interested a little bit. But if I don't have an actual awareness, of a need, like this is going to change my life, or this is going to change our business, or this is going to change something really like concretely, I'm just on a hunt for just basic information at that point. I'm not interested in buying anything until, but here I will say this. This is a super interesting conversation because there's innovative ideas where people don't even know they need it yet.
Sure.
Well, we had a conversation with a client just this week that after a year of marketing, we determined that he did not have a viable business.
Hey, it's worth noting, but what about those times, Joel, when it's not a viable business in its current form, but because the innovation or the actual need, the market doesn't even know they need it yet. It's so innovative, you're going to need a bunch of capital and a bunch of resources to kind of create a flood of a campaign, potentially billions of dollars, to actually create something that can generate, multiples billions of dollars. Super interesting.
Yeah, the learning curve and the knowledge curve and the market reception becomes the bottleneck.
Ooh, that's well put. Dominic, is that an interesting conversation around what you were just asking?
Yes, of course, especially what Joel said. We now understand what are we supposed to do afterwards. It was basically a test. So we tested, and now we're way smarter than we were before, structuring and launching the whole funnel. It's just that sometimes you do not see it, but you just have to stay open afterwards and to continue.
You may not see it, but the market will tell you.
Sure.
Super interesting.
That is 100% correct. This is really, really interesting. Like I really have this is a rare opportunity for me to speak a bit more advanced about funnels, because everybody kind of gets it in theory, but there's way more to it. Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you for sharing, Dominic. And we'll have you on the broadcast another time. I think we're already coordinating that too. But Frank, thank you so much for opening our minds to the idea that maybe we have some blind spots, maybe we have some opportunities, maybe we have some good things happening that we just need to talk with you more about figuring out what those are. And so I'm going to put that QR code up on the screen as we wrap up top of the hour here, and make sure that people have opportunity to go ahead and just reach out to you right now. Go ahead and take a picture of that screen and you won't regret it. This is a no cost 30-minute experience. I know for sure there are situations where people are paying $500, $1,000 for these type of consultations from people, but Frank's your guy. He's the person you want to go ahead and take a picture of that right now. Look him up, find a way to connect with him, whatever that takes. Find Frank Piuck, and it will be a blessing for you. God bless you guys. Christine, you had one last thing we wanted to mention. Thank you, Frank. And I know that Frank jumps onto the Wednesday collaborative marketers networking event that we have every Wednesday. So go to givermarketing.com/networking if you want to jump in on that open house networking event for marketers, marketing, communications, media. Christine, what have we been talking about on Wednesdays? Is there white label conversations, collaboration? What's been the focus recently?
Yes, and yes, all of those. Don't be a lonelypreneur. You're not alone. There's a whole community of marketers that want to work with you and want to collaborate with you. And the tide rises all. So let's rise each other up.
Come on, let's work together. I tell you what, this is one of the bottlenecks. I'm trying to bring this back to Frank, but this is one of the bottlenecks that I'm seeing in the marketing space is we think we can figure it out on our own. And then we end up getting, a handful of clients and we realize, oh, shoot, I got some blind spots. There's some things I don't understand. I need help. I need a little team. And I'm not talking about just hiring some random person from some random place that you don't even know who they are. I'm talking about we need a team that we can actually ask honest questions about, get some feedback, work together, and deliver for the client. And on Wednesdays, this is what we start trying to play with and try to figure out. And so, Christine, thank you for leading that. And it's just a privilege to be able to work with you. We worked together on different projects and different things, and look forward to even flying out to Texas. So we're going to be connecting with some other folks there too. So I'm looking forward to that. God bless you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Woo!